intro.
Yeah.
Welcome back to Perception. Here we just give an architects or creatives in the architectural field's opinion. Today we are going to discuss what the architectural profession actually does. With me we have
Tisotso Musi
and just
Peter Groenewald.
Peter Groenewald. Yes.
Groenewald.
Okay. Since this is the first proper funny, non-fun intro, what are your credentials?
I am a practicing architect, interior design and photographer in South Africa.
I'm a candidate senior architectural technologist at Osmond Lang Architect.
I'm a professional senior architectural technologist working at IP Architects. I'm also a professional filmmaker and sometimes a YouTuber. Okay, so.
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
So, by no means is this an exhaustive list of what we can do. Our industry is very broad in terms of what we can cover, and our talents are very, very exciting to engage in. By the way, there are several types of architectural professionals. In South Africa, we have the South African Council of the Architectural Profession, which has different categories of architectural practitioners. This would be starting at the lowest category, which would be a draftsperson. By the way, in SACAP, also interior designers can get registered. Yes. We also have architectural technicians, senior architectural technicians and technologists, and then we have the category of architects.
Yes. Yeah, so basically to qualify as architect, you need a master's in it. For the technologist and senior architectural technologist, you require a bachelor's minimum. For draftsperson, you require diploma. Yes.
However, a national diploma in interior design can get you to become a draftsperson at the SACAP.
Yes. Now, those are the formal things.
Yeah, those are the formal things.
Now, in the broader context of construction and the built environment, when we say architectural professionals, it can include the landscape architect, the interior designer, like I said, the urban planner, the project manager, the sustainability consultant, the quantity surveyor, the construction manager, and also the structural engineer, along with various other professionals in order to get a project completed within the legal requirements of the legislations of South Africa. There are also, you can go as broad as town planning and regional planning, and as low as being a draftsperson, like we said. However, because of the different sizes of projects, these professionals would get involved at varying degrees within particular projects.
Yes, as where an architect is trained to be involved in every single aspect from start to finish. The other professions are in various niches required. Whereas myself, as a senior architectural technologist, I'm not capable of doing I am capable of doing all 6 stages suggested by SACAP, but according to my profession, I lack the design to continue to do every single thing architectural does. My wife calls it architectural light, which kind of describes it, but it's more prone to be on the technology side of the architectural profession. So more required to detail designs and something that's more technologically sophisticated designs, where an architect does that as well with complicated and detailed design work of almost everything else.
Yes.
I think what an architect does well is communicating to various professions to understand what he is doing.
Now,
No, I'm also a candidate, so I'm more on the technical side. Even in the office, I am driven more on, not driven, but that's kind of my role. It's
For now, until you do your masters, right?
Until I do my masters. So it is basically, as you guys explained it, that's how it is, and there's no other way to move around it, unless you are going to go out of it and say, okay, what type of person are you within your field? Then that's the question where you can ask. But when it comes to the legalities and the hierarchies that are placed by SACAP, and as well as just, you know, people just seeing themselves, or I'm an architect, you are this, it's just like that, right? We are the technical guys, and there's architects who are more both technical as well as creative, as well as responsible for the technical guys in some cases. But yeah.
Yes, we can go on going around the legal terms, but everybody in the field tries to play their part.
Now, there might be a question that arises in terms of how do architects then range in terms of their capacity to build just about anything that they set their minds to. Now, in South Africa, the governance of architecture relegates architecture, or rather focuses architects to a particular skill set, which in our case is achievable through a master's program, which would then have an intense aspect of research within it. Yes. By research, we actually mean that you have elevated the art of self-teaching to a high level, which is recognized internationally.
Yes.
Right. So our ability to then design, like for instance, if you have Bjarkengel's group in Denmark,
yes,
that would be able to design a waste incineration plant with an architectural facade that has a particular function, versus a building as complex as the Union Buildings or the White House in the US, with the Union Buildings in South Africa, versus a prison in any country in the world. The aim is for you.
Well, let's compare quickly the prisons in the US done versus the prisons done in Norway and Sweden and Denmark, who are two completely different architectural typologies. One is focused more on imprisonment, so that's more of a engineering challenge to fix all the issues they see, where in Denmark they try more to rehabilitate, so it's much more softer touch on incarceration and to help the people become better. So two different styles of architects, but architectural typologies, but both of them still architecture.
Yes.
For the achievement of the one over the other, the exploration of design through research is key in order to, for instance, in both instances, there would be heavy involvement of psychology in terms of research to understand how, in the one aspect, one would be able to design a facility that aids and facilitates the process of rehabilitation, versus the other design process, which would focus more on incarceration and the separation of the person from society in all aspects, including sociological. Yes. So it's in as much as a lot of people think that architects have a tendency of overstating our abilities, the reality is there are so many components that have to feed into the design of a particular space in order to affect the mind of a human being, that we actually sound like we are doing more, but in reality we are understating our capacity in terms of, and our versatility in design and in the influence of the mind.
I think the skills lay more where as an architect I say we, but I'm not one yet, still have to do the masters. We project manage much more, so we understand where we have a lack of knowledge and either try to gain that knowledge or hire someone with that knowledge to assist us or do it themselves. So I think the most known one is engineers. So when an architect starts creating things that are beyond the scope of immediately understanding if it would work or not, an architect will have the vision and approach an engineer to make sure the structure functions and works before they go forward. Acoustic engineer so if you want to design an opera, you will try to get an acoustic engineer, because as an architect you just know enough to communicate with the acoustic engineer to understand what you have to do to make their job the best and give them the best tools to make a perfect acoustic auditorium. But you yourself won't design the acoustic part of it, but just the space for the acoustics to be in, or
the aesthetic of it, how you want it to be like this.
Or the acoustic engineer will say the shape will never work, we need to change that, and you understand enough to say yes, let's change it. So you will, so an architect's role as a project manager, the skill sets we have as a project manager, make sure that we have enough knowledge to create something that the client wants, no matter what it is. No matter what it is.
Now, the complexity of architecture is also inclusive of the media industry, right? I mean, if you look at typical example would be my favorite movie, The Matrix, right? In the various scenarios of The Matrix, there is the environments which don't necessarily even need to exist in the physical realm anymore, because we can generate them through computer generated systems and images and superimpose them into the scenery over and above the acting and the overall narrative, complementing the experience in order to elevate it so that the senses are much more engaged in the experience.
So, what are the myths, the common myths the public perceive on architects that aren't true?
Public myths, you know, when it comes to myths, it's weird. I'm just thinking about what you guys were just talking about, right? And how architects perceive, especially now. Let's just distance ourselves from architects for a second. Let's say we are not part of the field. Let's say we are just individuals who are looking at the field from an outside perspective. You look at these individuals, you think to yourself, these guys are balls, you know? They have balls, they have the guts to come and tell me this and this and this. And then, okay, now we jump back into our reality.
Your mic?
It's inside.
Oh.
Yeah. You ask yourself, okay, these individuals don't...
Is it reading correctly?
It's reading fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Continue.
Yes. So you ask yourself, okay, let me just start again, sorry. So as I said, if we put ourselves away as not as architects or people who do not understand architecture, we see infrastructure and we just see spaces, we just see volumes, we don't actually even realize the volumes. We just see something that needs to be used for what it was intended to be used for. That's supposed to be where I'm supposed to go sing. That's where I'm gonna go sing, right? And now when we are architects now, let's say we come back to that, we don't just look at that, now we look at those details, right? So it's kind of just so interesting that there's the side of understanding practice, your level and this, then there's a side of, you know, because it's always for me, it's like, do we understand and respect why we do architecture, even though the people who we do it for don't know? Even if we are project managers, even if we're this, it doesn't matter at the end of the day as long as they get their whatever facility they need. But the problem is, do we actually look at it from a point of, we're not just giving a building, we're giving something they can use to their best ability. I don't care if I'm an architect or not, but am I doing my best to make sure that this person actually uses the building to their best capability without this thing of mine saying, oh no, I'm this, I'm that, you know, just put your ego aside. I don't know. That's just something that struck when it hit, because I'm starting to think about the architects that I've met, and I'm not saying that they're bad people, but there's some who I feel like they're overestimating their value.
Well, the thing is, right now we have a lot of challenges as the individual global citizens living in South Africa, right? We have about, 8 billion headed towards 8.1 billion people on the planet, with the restricted amount of land mass. Which
habitable, usable land mass.
Yes, and all of this land mass has to include us and all the systems that we need in order to thrive, not necessarily just even survive. Now we have also global warming, and then from there we have the AI conundrum.
Yes. So we have a lot of external factors.
Yes.
Check the previous episode for that.
We have a lot of external factors influencing the decisions we make as architects. So at this point, the largest one is climate change and how the carbon footprint produced in the construction industry can be mitigated by design alone. And that's something where architects can take a foothold. So a good way of looking at it, if you have to import your concrete from India to build in South Africa, it's going to have a larger concrete footprint than if you use more vernacular styles of building, let's say a bit more timber locally grown, and use that for the building. So a design decision like that can influence it. And yes, it's one building, but let's say half of the architects in South Africa start making decisions like this to use more sustainable things, we can have actually a global improvement of construction, because the construction industry contributes 30% to the human emissions of carbon dioxide. So there's something we can reduce a lot if we just start designing correctly.
You know, the conversation that we started now was what do architects do? This is it. All the stuff you just mentioned. This is it, right? And we have to now question ourselves in that case, that are we doing that? And if we're doing that, then we're gonna just have to render ourselves useless.
Well, the thing is, our profession is quite complex in that all of the things that we're saying, which are physical manifestations of design, impact on the psychology of the human mind, right? And this is not even speaking about what we do with animals and what we do with insects and what we do with our food and what
vegetarians will kill us.
So we are speaking about right now. We have a lot of architectural professionals who have the ability to help human beings become better at being human.
Yes.
Right. Through spatial design, which impacts the psychology of a human being. I mean, there have been scientific studies of how some of the projects, as in the residential units given to a specific demographic in the US, impacts them psychologically and along with their
they
social
did the same
behavior.
research on the public housing, right?
Yes.
Is it the same one?
Yes.
It's the same one?
Yes.
Yes.
So when we look at just how much the size of a space, the quality of the space, the materiality of the space, the greenness of the space, the connectivity of the space to the environment, and access of the human person and the human body to natural environments for therapeutic benefit. All of that is just a segment within architecture, which we are now also starting to look at through biophilia, through green design.
Guys, this is what we do.
So most people think, as an architect, we're the one that draws up the plans for the building, and that building needs to be habitable by humans. So to break it down, in order to make a building work, we need to understand the obvious, which is we need to understand the materials, which means the structure. Can it take the load? Is it good? Is it insulating from the environment? Does it keep sound noise down? Now that is the easy part. Then we have to make a design that works for humans, in the sense of, if we just make a building where you enter and there's office spaces, it's going to be a bit chaotic. So we know as humans there needs to be a transition space. And this is where we start going into the psychology of human behavior and the changing trends with that as well. So that is what makes architects not just a builder, is the psychological aspects that we have to know how humans work to make this building. And then after that you go to human concerns, which is now the climate. How can we build a bit better? And as soon as we start exploring not the basic material like the mycelium growths or hemp construction or other alternative structures, we start exploring the basics to make things better. And this is where people think we just do a building, but that's just the start. That's the easy part of it. We have to encompass so much to make it just work. Because everybody's been in a okay building, you're fine, but the moment you get to a good design building, you immediately Walk in, you feel it, your eyes go up, you look at it, it makes you feel better. You also then immediately know, oh, the front desk is most likely there. By instinct, you know it should be around that area. You will go there as well. You will automatically feel the toilet should be around here somewhere, the office space would be somewhere.
You can feel it.
Yeah, and that's where the psychological of how humans engage, but also modern typology, how we are also trained to expect a hospital looks like this, a hospital's most likely that looks like an office building, that looks like a department store.
There's a project that was done, I remember I was doing research on thesis documents, right? There's a project that it was a University of Pretoria, if not UCT, Caesar Stone. You can find it on Caesar Stone, the Caesar Stone website, Corobrik website. The 2021, 2022 award winners, those ones, for masters. And you can go through all of them, but there's one who did a very interesting thesis where they spoke about designing for people who with, it's like memory loss, but not long term, like very short term memory loss, and designing for them, right? Like you were just talking about the feeling of knowing where to go, and that's what she was using, right? Basically using that feeling that this is how this space is supposed to work, so I'm pretty sure this thing is here, because they're gonna forget. But now if that feeling is still there, they won't. And for me, that was like, wow, I love that.
With that, then we go back to what you mentioned earlier, is the point of research, where they research something like that, got experts in to understand what the building should be, how to interact, and then designing with all that input, which is brilliant. It's not an easy thing to do.
It was not easy, but I think she executed it properly, and I love that project. I love the way it starts, the definition, the research. The research is literally at the top, and it explains every type of disease and sickness, all the types, and how she's accommodating them, and the age gaps and how old they must be. But the point is, if you're asking yourself, what do architects do? If you can just take yourself out of your side and just step into her shoes, and then not look at buildings as a facility or a structure, and look at it as something that we just mentioned now, you'll realize it.
I think that's why also you always feel architects have comments on every part of society, but it's because we have to understand most parts of society to do our job.
Yes.
And sometimes you get an egotistical architect thinking that they know better, which we don't like at all. We don't like that view that architects think they know everything. They just research everything to try to understand something, to build better, and then just sticks with it.
It sticks with them.
Well, the thing is, the art of learning is something you have to embrace for the rest of your working life, your practicing life. I mean, if you're going to be integrating psychology, social engineering, politics, art, mental health, physical health, the environment, and all other topics,
geopolitical influences,
yes, safety, security, I mean the feeling of safety versus the actual manifestation of safety are two different things. This is the difference between you walking on the street and you feeling safe in the mall, right? Obviously, I cannot go into the depths of explaining what that is, because that would be a security risk in of itself. However, in our ability to think, the aim is for us to be able to think about a vast majority of scenarios applicable to a particular architectural situation to get a really excellent solution, not only for the current implementation, but for future implementations, or rather for future experiences even beyond the current use of a building.
Well, and that's where we come to timeless designs, where if you go to most cities in the world and starting to do tours, one of the first things you do is buildings, architectural landscapes, castles, and these are architectural principles that was done so well that 500, 1,000, 2,000 years later, they're still bringing income as
Yes.
income to the country.
Why are you saying this is the first thing? You said what? What did you just say? You said that's the first thing they take you to. I feel like
one of the first things, like if you go to Paris, some of the first things you look are the architectural landscapes. But you wouldn't go to Thailand and go look at their architecture. We will, but the average person won't immediately go to architecture. But as soon as they get there, they hear of these buildings that they can visit that are incredible. So it's
but if
always
you're mentioning
one of the things.
If you're mentioning timeless, then yes. But if you're mentioning just architecture in general, it's inevitable. You will walk anywhere. Immediately you land in South Africa, you are seeing South Africa. You're not seeing parts of it. You can go see our monuments, you can go see, but every single thing that you walk past is South Africa. It might be an imitation of another space somewhere, you know, these Herbert Baker stuff. It might be an imitation of the UK, but it's here in South Africa now, right? And you have to acknowledge that it's South Africa, right? Right.
Okay.
So yeah.
Conclusion.
Well, the reality is, as architects, within the context of artificial intelligence, we cannot yet be rendered redundant, considering the complexities of what we need to engage with. At the point where AI has become general in terms of application in society, we'll have another conversation regarding the profession, right? However, in the meantime, we are still exploring ourselves and the industry and the complexity of human society in its current direction of evolution, while also assisting in the development of habitat for humankind in a manner which is beneficial to as many people as possible. Right.
Okay. Sorry, I was thinking about architects now. Conclusion, just we do what we do because we love buildings and we love representing our people, right? We love representing people in general, and we love the development of space, especially when it's well thought through. So when you ask yourself, what do we do or why do we do it? Just know that we do it out of love, right? We do it from the deepest parts of our hearts to say, this is what we actually want for you or for us, not just for me, right? I think for me, when it comes to this topic, that's my conclusion. If you want to think about other stuff, just know that we do it for love, man.
I would say we design for humans. We are the manifestation of what humans require to live and thrive in this world. From we decided we're not going to live in caves anymore. We are, I'm not going to say important, but we are important in maintaining the health of society mentally. And if you think that's not correct, look at the Soviet Union's history of buildings. How many people killed themselves because they lived in shit. I would say we're not perfect, but we try to do the best for humans we can.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
All right,
please
guys.
bear in mind that in the study of humans and architecture, we have to go even to Neanderthalic times in terms of our exploration and design of space for the protection of the physical body. And with a couple of thousand years behind us in terms of collective knowledge, there's a lot to know.
There's a lot.
Okay. What are your buildings that we can suggest for our listeners? Me first. My suggestion is Little Island Pier by Heather Wick Studios. This is an old pier in New York, which they completely renovated in a park. The reason I chose it for this is because it's structural engineering, landscape, and design all in one, made in an absolutely beautiful form. I'll send you guys the photos.
Yeah, I want those. I suggest the Soweto Theatre. It's a very nice implementation within that community, bringing in like basically the opportunity for kids to learn arts, acting, dancing, and all that stuff, as well as giving some color into the whole space. You might realize that the buildings I've been suggesting have been very colorful, and I'm not a colorful person. And it's interesting to me too Yeah, I'm not. I'm clearly not a colorful person, but it is interesting to me, and I like those implementations. Go see them, and I'm saying this so that you can, if you're an architect and you're dealing with something similar, you can actually get yourself. And I always say this, man: step out of the box and see what you can do.
Well, if you're in South Africa, I recommend The Cradle of Mankind in Johannesburg. This is by MMA and Gap Architects. This is a summary of human habitat in South Africa, or rather the human evolution of architecture and space. As best as we could, within different scenarios. There's a cave in there somewhere.
There's a couple of caves.
Yes.
In the area.
So, like I said, with the thousands of years of human occupation of space on the planet, a summary of that is contained in that building.
Excellent.
Yes.
Right. Okay. Where can people find you?
This is Instagram account at Katleho.t, Katleho.t rather. With LinkedIn, it is Katleho Tsimologolebete.
You guys can find me at ArchiTC on Instagram, or you can find me as Tisa Musi on LinkedIn.
For me, my Instagram is pfgear_film. If you like history, you can follow me on No Year Zero. And yes, until next time.
Till next time, guys.
Okay.